Yeah, Joker is f***ing genius. A shaking take of the classic character, this movie looks into the psychological issues behind his origin story. Within 2 days after its release, this movie was ranked number 9 on IMDb's greatest movies of all time. Now that might be a bit much, since it kicked Fight Club out of the top 10, but still, this movie is f***ing incredible. Now without any spoilers, let's take a look at what makes this movie so brilliant. The performance by Joaquin Phoenix honestly might be the best acting I've seen since, well, Heath Ledger's Joker, and that's saying so much. There's so many incredible moments in this movie. The first scenes of the movie, we're introduced to Arthur with a close-up for 2 minutes of uncontrollable laughter. His face morphs from a demented happiness to a tortured cry, and everywhere in between. He keeps coughing and choking on his own laughter. Instantly, I said to myself, holy sh**. It's then revealed that he's at a mental health counseling session and often suffers from uncontrollable bouts of laughter, apparently from head trauma. Now, I don't want to spew out the entire events of the movie, just go and watch it. But here are some things I found stunning. When they compare the subjectivity of what's funny and not funny to what's right and wrong, genius. The use of strings descending into madness as Arthur dances down the staircase in slow motion, genius. Arthur's contorted body language the entire movie, genius. The build-up. Things keep happening to Arthur until he's a walking disaster, ready to snap at any moment. Each time something else happens, it makes you think, okay, that's gotta be the thing that makes him snap. But it keeps pouring on, and drags the viewer through Arthur's descent into madness. Genius. The soundtrack. Besides the orchestral churning and droning, we also get a ton of popular, seemingly upbeat songs from the time period with slightly demented lyrics if you really think about them. Some people get their kicks stomping on a drain. Genius. The visuals. Everything in this movie is beautiful. Well, it's actually bleak as but it all fits so well. Costume design, set color, color grading, the use of graffiti, the vintage television graphics. Genius. But there's a lot behind this masterpiece. Let's take a look at the important moments in history that inspired Joker. The Joker first appeared in the debut issue of Batman on April 25th, 1940, created by Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Jerry Robinson. Credit for the Joker's creation is disputed. Kane and Robinson both claimed responsibility for the Joker's design while acknowledging Finger's contribution. But guess what? Neither of them invented this character. Finger showed them a picture of Conrad White, from The Man Who Laughs, a movie that inspired their original character as well as the Joker's plot. So yes, DC invented the Joker, but the character in a general sense was created in 1869 in a novel called The Man Who Laughs by a French writer, Victor Hugo. Now my boy Victor might just be the greatest, best-known French author ever. He wrote Les Mis and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Ever heard of him? Fun fact, it took him 17 years to write Les Mis. His stories all called for the end of misery and poverty caused by the aristocracy. When Napoleon seized complete power in 1851, Victor Hugo openly declared him a traitor to France. Hugo was then exiled from France. Victor Hugo wrote The Man Who Laughs, aka The Laughing Man, over a 15-month period when he was living in exile on the Channel Islands, off the coast of Normandy. Also published under the title By the Order of the King, this book wasn't well received until the movie came out decades later. Now let me give you a quick rundown on the plot. Pay attention to the similarities it shares with Joker. In the 1680s, despotic King James kills a foreign baron. He seizes his 2-year-old son and rightful heir to the throne. He sells the boy to a group of wandering criminals, the Comprachicos, or child buyers, who mutilated and disfigured children, who are then forced to rot in poverty or exhibited as carnival freaks. The boy grows up as an abandoned outsider. That is, until a letter brings the boy's true identity to the light, and a battle with the aristocracy ensues. For our purposes, King James II is Bruce Wayne's father, but I can't really tell you why without spoiling some things, so just keep that in mind as you watch the movie. In short, an heir to an empire is deformed by childhood abuse, thrown away, then learns his true identity, then battles with his own thoughts and aristocracy for some twisted form of happiness and belonging. Boom! It was adapted to a film in 1928, directed by Paul Lenny, starring Conrad White. Now, although this movie is technically from the US, this thing is drenched with German Expressionism. German Expressionism was a film movement in pre-World War II Germany. The entire country was shut off from and afraid of the rest of the world. This national fear bubbled like a pre-Nazi soup. During superinflation, Germans were incentivized to spend their money as it was plummeting in value. For this reason, the economy tanked in nearly every way except for one: film. Believe it or not, during this time, Germany's film industry was at an all-time best. The movies were a great place to spend your money before it was worthless. You could go to the cinema and get lost in a story for a few hours. For a brief moment, you could forget about how much life sucked. But those movies were absolutely Definitely check out this other video I made about German Expressionism so you could fully understand why films from this era are the most terrifying of all time. Now, Paul Lenny was a key figure in this German film movement. Born of a Jewish family, he worked as a costume and film designer. During World War I, Lenny began directing his own films and also experimented with unusual short animated films. He was invited to Universal Studios Hollywood in 1927. His first film in Hollywood, The Cat and the Canary, basically set the standard for Hollywood's haunted house trope. In 1927, he finished The Man Who Laughs, but it was held for release until April 1928, with sound effects and a music score added. Now, this makes sense, as the first sound movie, The Jazz Singer, was released in late 1927. Conrad White plays the lead role, the same guy who played the somnambulist in The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and later, Major Strasser in Casablanca. Now, in this version of the story, King James II sentences the barons to death in an Iron Maiden and orders the Comprachicos to disfigure the son with a permanent grin so that he will, quote, laugh forever at his fool of a father. The laughing man, known as Gwynplaine, falls in love but remains distant, believing himself unworthy of affection. His disfigured, smiling face leaves him unable to ever truly match his face to his emotions. Seeing him shed a tear while smiling like that is just, well, terrifying. And Joker perfectly recreated that feeling in the opening scene where Arthur hysterically laughs in agony. It was this version that is cited as the inspiration for the Joker, thanks in part to the incredible costume and makeup design as well as acting. The Joker was actually written to die at the end of the first Batman comic book, but they decided to let him live to become a recurring nemesis. Another important connection to make is with Robert De Niro's breakout film, Taxi Driver, directed by Martin Scorsese. Both Joker and Taxi Driver revolve around a social deviant thrown away by society, trapped in a dirty city, who then decide to take matters into their own violent hands. They both get guns from a coworker, they both revolve around a morally dubious politician rising to power to, quote-unquote, fix the city, and Robert De Niro even plays a lead role as a Johnny Carson-style late-night TV host. However, Joaquin Phoenix said that he didn't really even think of Taxi Driver while filming. He believes instead that it was more so influenced by the entire time period that Taxi Driver came from. He said the common feature between those movies was that they were focusing on and exploring characters that were really complex and challenged the audience's feelings about those characters. Writer and director Todd Phillips has named a list of movies from 1975 to 1982 that directly inspired Joker. He names Network, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Taxi Driver, The King of Comedy, Dog Day Afternoon, and Raging Bull. In particular, The King of Comedy holds a lot of parallels. It tells the story of an aspiring stand-up comic who teeters with mental fortitude until he kidnaps a talk show host to get on television. He then admits to his crimes on live TV. The Joker also appears on a late-night TV show in the third Batman comic where he plants a kiss on the female doctor guest, which also happens in Joker, so yeah, Easter eggs everywhere. These films all played a giant part in the making of Joker, but all in all, Todd Phillips said that he wanted Joker just to feel like a movie that came out in 1979. Another interesting fact, there was a famous event in 1984 that ended with 4 teens dead on the New York City subway. The man who shot them was a 75-year-old Bernie Getz, who claimed that he was defending himself from a mugging and initially was dubbed the Subway Vigilante by the media before he turns himself in. In Joker, the media and population strangely say the same exact positive things when interviewed as people did in real life, portraying him as a hero. This subway scene in Joker also looks enormously similar to the scene in Death Wish, which came out before the guy actually shot people in the subway. And obviously, Todd Phillips has also cited The Man Who Laughs, Batman comics, and Heath Ledger's Joker as influences. But what's interesting is that this Joker is a completely standalone, non-canon take on the character. Doesn't have any superheroes, doesn't tie into any existing universe, which is just so refreshing to me. There's no franchise porn involved. It's just a straight-up origin story about the demented mind of a villain that we've all seen played in tons of other ways. It even allows enormous room for interpretation, which we never get from superhero movies. There's a theory out there that this movie all takes place in Arthur's head, in a mental facility, just like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. But I think Phillips made a great move by leaving the Joker's true origin story as multiple choice, just like Heath Ledger. I hope more filmmakers take notes on this film style. Okay, that's all for now. Bye!